Have you ever wondered why Eastern medicine talks endlessly about the spleen, even though Western medicine says the spleen is practically useless? How can one system call it the center of health, while the other says you can remove it and live normally? Today, on Eastern medicine and modern science, we uncover one of the biggest misunderstandings between East and West, and why it could completely change how you understand your body. In Western medicine, organs are physical objects. You can see them on a scan. You can remove them. You can measure their function. But in Eastern medicine, organs are functional systems. They are networks, not anatomical pieces. So the Eastern heart is not the Western heart. The Eastern liver is not just the anatomical liver, and the Eastern spleen is an entirely different system altogether. A family member of mine lost his spleen in an accident. Doctors removed it to save his life. He lived until the age of 84. And when he passed away, it had nothing to do with his missing spleen. This alone shows one thing. In Western medicine, the spleen is not essential, but Eastern medicine insists the spleen is vital to human life. So what exactly is Eastern medicine talking about? The Eastern spleen represents two major functions. First, transformation, turning food into usable nutrients. Second, transportation, sending those nutrients throughout the entire body. Modern science would call this digestion, absorption, metabolism, circulation, insulin regulation, even energy production at the cellular level. All of this is the spleen system in Eastern medicine. This is why Eastern doctors say the spleen governs the blood. If blood leaks where it shouldn't, nosebleeds, uterine bleeding, blood in the stool, the root cause is often a weak spleen system, not just a damaged vessel. It explains why some people bleed easily and why the problem persists unless the spleen is strengthened. Children who frequently get nosebleeds, elderly people who constantly cough with phlegm, these issues often trace back to the spleen. Because when the spleen can't transform fluids, phlegm builds up, and when the spleen can't control blood, bleeding occurs. Take diabetes as a modern example. Western medicine sees high blood sugar. Cells can't use glucose. Insulin signaling fails. Eastern medicine interprets the same thing as the spleen fails to transform and transport. Nutrients stay in the bloodstream instead of entering the cells. Different language, same biological reality. As we age, the spleen weakens. Children recover fast because their spleen system is strong. But in older adults, the same cold can turn into chronic bronchitis. The same stomach discomfort becomes a chronic condition. Because a strong spleen means a strong recovery. So how do we protect this system? Number 1, manage stress and overthinking. Thinking too hard pulls blood from the digestive system. Number 2, do not exercise right after eating. Let your body send blood to your gut first. Number 3, chew your food thoroughly. Number 4, prefer warm, cooked foods over cold and raw. Number 5, eat until you're 70 to 80% full. And number 6, for elders, soups and congee are incredibly supportive. I have said a lot to prove to everyone that the spleen in Western medicine is a degenerate organ with almost no function. But the spleen in Eastern medicine is different. It is not an organ that everyone can see, but is a synthesis of two main functions: using and excreting nutrients. Eastern medicine talks about the metabolism of the spleen. What is metabolism? Literally, it is transportation. I have said before, which organ's function is responsible for transporting blood, right? Now let's continue. The spleen controls the metabolism and transportation. Therefore, according to Eastern medicine theory, blood belongs to the spleen. According to Eastern medicine terminology, the spleen controls the blood. What does control mean? It is commanding and commanding. In other words, The blood must listen to the spleen. Wherever it wants to go, it must go there. If there is a condition where the blood is running wild, for example, in women, the amount of menstrual blood is very large and cannot stop flowing. One day, one must change 7 to 8 sanitary napkins or more. All of them are soaked for 7. 8 days or even 10 days are still not clean. This is due to poor blood control function, unable to stop bleeding. This disease is called uterine bleeding in Oriental medicine. Many doctors use hemostatic and blood-enriching drugs such as donkey glue and Panax pseudoginseng, but not many people are cured. In fact, this disease requires improving the function of the spleen. This is because the spleen's blood control function is too poor. In addition to common gynecological diseases such as uterine bleeding, there are many other types of bleeding. For example, some people often have nosebleeds. Some people often have bloody stools. Patients with asthma, chronic bronchitis. The later stage is called blood leakage in Oriental medicine. And how to treat it? Ancient Oriental medicine has a detailed analysis of this. It is said that blood is like a lake, and the spleen is a dam. When blood flows chaotically, the main reason is that the dam is not stable. Therefore, for patients in this case, it is necessary to improve the function of the spleen. If people do not understand this, it will be very difficult. Many doctors say that this is a blood heat syndrome. Using heat-clearing drugs to treat it can easily make the disease more serious. Even causing death is not strange. Children often have runny noses due to a weak spleen. Many children under 7 or 8 years old often have runny noses. I have treated many young patients like this. Among them, there was a patient who almost had a nosebleed every 1 or 2 days. So what medicine did I use to treat it? A medicine to strengthen the spleen and stomach. Normally, the nosebleeds will disappear in less than a month. You see, the ancestors of Oriental medicine are really very powerful. Let's talk about the metabolism function of the spleen. The spleen controls the blood, which is shown in the 2 words control, right? It manages the blood, which means it manages the transport function in our body. Also, what does the word transform mean? It means to change. It is a transformation from one thing to another. In modern science, it is a chemical transformation. A very important branch of modern chemistry is biochemistry, which specializes in studying transformations in living organisms. For example, when we eat a piece of pork, when the meat enters the mouth, it is chewed and reaches the stomach. The stomach will turn it into milk. The villi in the intestine will absorb nutrients such as protein, fat, or other minerals into the blood. Then the blood will transport them to the whole body: the heart, liver, spleen, stomach, kidneys, skin, fur, hair, etc. Wherever nutrition is needed, it will be delivered. This process is a transport process, right? We just said that the spleen controls the blood. The blood transports. Note that in the process of transporting these substances, the molecular structure of the pork has not changed. It remains the same. So when it reaches the place where protein is needed, a change will occur. Originally, the molecular structure of that piece of meat was broken down. Then the ions, amino acids, nucleic acids were reassembled into a combination and formed human cells. This process is called transformation. This is very interesting. This is just an example. In fact, all the metabolic activities of life are basically transformations. Let's take another example. For example, sugar in modern science is called carbohydrates. It is initially present in food in the form of starch and fat. When people eat it, it is absorbed into the blood and becomes glucose. This glucose goes with the blood. It is in the blood and circulates throughout the body. Is that blood sugar? Actually, blood sugar is a transportation process. Then it goes to the cells that need sugar. When this sugar enters the cells, it breaks down into calories. This process is metabolism. Let's go back to talk about diabetes. What is diabetes? Actually, its job is to metabolize, but it doesn't do it well. His sugar is always in a state of transportation, always in the blood, creating a state of hyperglycemia, right? According to Oriental medicine, the root cause of it is a weak spleen. In addition to metabolizing nutrients, it also metabolizes impurities. The spleen is responsible for removing impurities in the body. In modern terms, these impurities are all insoluble in water and are products of fat metabolism. They need to be transformed into something soluble in water before they can be excreted. This is also a transformation in the way Oriental medicine calls dehumidification. Therefore, Oriental medicine says that metabolism has two aspects. One is food metabolism, which is the conversion of nutrients in food into energy. The second is fluid metabolism, which is the metabolism of impurities in the body out. The spleen is responsible for many things like that. Related to what we said before, the four main steps in nutrition are eating, absorbing, using, and excreting. What does the metabolism of the spleen equate to? It equates to using and excreting, right? So when we talk about the metabolism function of the spleen, if we look at it from the perspective of a medicine, modern science, nutrition, how many organs does it relate to? Including blood transport, including the absorption, use, and metabolism of nutrients by each cell, including the detoxification of the liver, the filtration of the kidneys, and the insulin secreted by the pancreas to promote the use of sugar. Isn't this part of metabolism? Yes. There are also many functions of other organs. This series of functions all fall within the scope of the spleen in traditional Chinese medicine. So, in the future, if you hear a traditional medicine doctor say that your illness is due to a weak spleen, or a weak spleen, poor metabolism, it is best not to think that this is about a stomach disease. These are two completely different problems. Therefore, the spleen is very important. People with a weak spleen will certainly lack blood and energy and have many impurities in their bodies. We will talk about the matter of impurities in the body later. In traditional medicine, it is a type of evil spirit. If the righteous energy is low and the evil energy is high, you will get sick, right? Therefore, in traditional medicine, the spleen and stomach are called the five viscera. A very healthy spleen and stomach will be the foundation for health. Without it, you cannot be healthy. Speaking of this, I remember that in traditional medicine, there is a very important school called the Earth Nourishing School. Earth is the fifth in the five elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. People of this school, no matter what disease they treat, need to start with the spleen and stomach. They must nourish the spleen and stomach. When there is enough blood and qi, any disease can be cured without taking medicine. On the contrary, if the spleen and stomach are not healthy, even if you use medicine to treat the disease, the effect will not last long, and the disease will quickly recur. Why? Because your blood and qi have no origin. If there is no origin, how can it last long? Therefore, when we talk about health and disease treatment, we must first take care of the spleen and stomach. We must always pay attention to taking care of the spleen and stomach. Only when the spleen and stomach are healthy can your body recover, and only then can the disease be cured. Everyone pays attention to what I say. I am not saying that when the spleen and stomach are healthy, your disease will be cured. For some serious diseases, relying only on a healthy spleen and stomach, enough blood and qi is not enough to cure. We still need to take medicine. Chinese medicine or Western medicine is fine. But for diseases that are common in the elderly or chronic diseases, taking medicine alone cannot cure them. Does everyone understand this? Only when the spleen and stomach are healthy and the blood and qi are full can you cure them quickly and thoroughly when you take medicine. Of course, there are also small problems that can be cured by themselves when the blood and qi are abundant. But this only happens to young people and people with mild illnesses. In fact, many diseases in young people can be cured, but not in the elderly. For example, colds and coughs can be cured in young people, and their coughs will also go away. But the elderly may cough continuously for half a month, or even not be cured, and may develop chronic bronchitis and asthma. Another example is that young people who do not eat properly may have stomach aches, bloating, and indigestion for a few days. But after they take medicine, they will get better. However, it is very difficult for the elderly to get well. They are also prone to chronic stomach diseases. We have all seen these phenomena in life, right? When we translate TCM spleen function into modern terms, it includes stomach digestion, intestinal absorption, blood sugar regulation, insulin, liver detoxification, kidney filtration, cellular energy production, metabolic waste removal. Meaning, the spleen in TCM is a whole metabolic system, not a single organ. A strong spleen equals strong metabolism, stable energy, and strong immunity. A weak spleen equals chronic disease, slow recovery, and poor resilience. TCM schools, such as the Earth Nourishing School, Earth Element, treat almost all conditions by strengthening the spleen first. If you want to understand how Eastern medicine and modern science can complement each other, make sure to follow this channel and tell me, what topic should we decode next?